to Glenlathan. Lethan. I'm never going to get that name right. Maybe after a couple of years playing on here, then we'll get there. It is now 2nd of March, or March 2. Never sure which way around to say that. And it's time to plough in field 7 and split it into 2 fields. But going to be 2 fairly small-ish fields, I guess. Long term on here, I would like to expand, and financially we're probably in a position where we're starting to get to that point where we can expand and get some more land, or work on paying off the mortgage first. It's probably more sensible. We will see. But yeah, definitely smaller fields on here should be okay, because we are going to be focused really on the animals once they arrive, which should be in April. Don't worry, I'm not going to show loads of the ploughing. We've done quite a bit of ploughing on here, obviously, as we get the fields all sorted and stuff. So we're actually going to get into getting half of this field planted. So it's going to be barley, I believe, we plant. So I'm going to end up skipping ahead all the way to April. I think it was a while ago that I actually recorded the game footage for this, and this is where we get into the one of the many rambles for today. I have been a little bit AWOL, I guess. That's a combination of things, and it's meant that I've just not got content produced. Been dealing with some stuff out in the big scary real world, and not had the time or mental energy to tackle it. So probably, if I was to answer as a percentage over the last week, I've probably been down at like some days 25%, some days up at maybe 50 on a good day. Had a lot of headaches. That's mostly stress related, and I get this kind of thing in my head where it just kind of, the best description that I've used recently is it feels like there is a storm in my brain. It makes me very reactive. I can be really short-tempered, I can be happy, I can be sad within a few minutes of each other. It's brilliant, and it's mostly stress and fatigue and stuff. So I was sensible, took a few days away from things as much as I can. I find it really hard to switch my brain off. So yeah, that's why there's been a bit of a gap. It may still be a bit inconsistent in next week or so, just because I need to catch up on this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a little bit of that. I had a really good suggestion on here, actually, from Smock Farmer, who is one of the I can't remember one of the top tier patrons. So yeah, and that was to pick up some sheep, which is pretty good traditional Scottish animal. I think at the moment we're going to be struggling for space for sheep, but I definitely think it's something that I want to have a look at in the future as we get more land. Probably we'll do something similar to what I did on Maypole with the cows, and maybe create a custom sheep pasture to put somewhere. Maybe once we pick up another field, we might be able to section off part of the field to do that. So yeah, really like that idea. The other thing that I'm considering is adding in the crop rotation mod that I use on Saxthorpe, and putting the grass into the rotation as well. So probably we'll do 2 or 3 game years on here, and that'll mean until we buy more land, we'll essentially have 5 fields. So we'll rotate the pasture as well. I started to do that on Maypole. Obviously I had replanted and swapped the field over, and I think I should continue that on, and adding the crop rotation mod in will probably make that interesting. So yeah, I'm going to have a look at that as well, I think. So it is now April 1. The money has gone down a reasonable chunk. I think that was mostly loan fees. I don't think I've added in the April payment from words from the dairy. Yeah, and we will bring the cows over. So I'm also thinking, so there's two reasons the money's gone down. One is loan payments, and the other is now that it's April, there are contracts, and there is the multiplayer element of this. So I put it on half time because there are contracts for patrons to do, and it's been a while since there have been any. So this was up over the weekend as a multiplayer game, and a couple of guys did manage to get on and do some contracts. They are all seeding and fertilizing contracts, so I had to buy a whole load of seed and fertilizer because at the moment none of the permissions are set up for anyone to be able to go and buy stuff like that because it's one farm. So I brought a whole load of seed and you'll see the mahoosive pile in a moment, and you'll also see a really weird effect. I don't know if I left any in, so I've just realized that actually I want to split this field up, not cultivate it as one field, which is what I was doing. So we're going to put a split in the field. But yeah, I had a really weird effect with the seeder on the multiplayer server, that I was getting a whole load of rubber banding, so I actually ended up taking it off to do the seeding. I don't know whether that was connection my end or connection to the server or what, but it was unplayable, so I temporarily took it down to finish doing this job. But yeah, I'm just trying to get roughly half the field. I probably end up doing a really bad job like I did of cutting up the other field, but it'll be okay. And I'm going to go across really slowly, doing one click at a time so that I don't end up making a really wide divide between the two, because eventually we'll want to put it back in and I don't want to lose too much farmland. It turns out it's probably not wide enough because Courseplay can't detect it. So Courseplay still thinks this is one field, which is great fun when you're trying to do multiple jobs at once. So you might need to make it a bit wider so the Courseplay can pick it up. The other thing that I have seen suggested is if you then paint meadow on top of this, that might help. So I might try that as well. That was based on a comment on one of my Courseplay tutorials from a very long time ago. And I do find it equally amusing and frustrating that people will comment on, I think I spoke about this recently actually, will comment on a tutorial that I did a year ago or 2 years ago, expecting me to remember exactly what happened in the video. And yeah, it doesn't happen like that, you know. It doesn't happen like that. Quite often it means I have to go back and watch and find out and relearn, and that's the one that usually means comments take a while to reply to because I need time. What else did I want to chat about today? So I've got a whole bunch of mod ideas that I'm still sitting on. There's the update to the improvised animal shed that I want to do. There's the update to the fermenter that I'm using on Saxthorpe that I want to do. There's this other mod that I've got that I keep mentioning that I haven't said really what it is that I'm thinking about releasing. I just haven't had the motivation lately, which is weird because normally when my head gets stormy, modding is quite a good one. It's quite a good distraction, but I have been distracting myself with Timberborn. You might have seen the really weird little video I did of making a kind of, I called it a hyperlapse. There's a mod in Timberborn which lets you place a camera in the world and it takes a picture every hour. It'd be really cool to have something like that in FS, although it might not work well in FS, but it works. I thought it works quite well in Timberborn, but some of you farm sim folks are sensitive because that lost me at least a subscriber. So, you know, I know some of you don't like if I don't post just farm sim, but it was an experiment and you can't do this in farm sim that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of a mod that lets you do this in farm sim, so yeah, I thought it was quite cool. I ended up just playing that a lot this weekend. It was really nice to dive into and escape the world. It was weird. I had a long weekend and we had some plans for yesterday, Monday, and didn't do any of them because my head was just a meh. Yeah. Oh well. Things will improve. Yeah, that's kind of it. I guess the other one As you might have noticed on Mod Hub that mods have been a bit slow. Lancey posted, I think just before the weekend, about how his mod had gone red and that meant it failed, which it didn't. It meant that testing was running late, which I kind of indirectly pointed out to him through some commenting on some others' posts. But, you know, at that point, it had made it all the way to Farm Sim News and DJ Goham, who all took it as gospel truth, you know, rather than, you know, when something happens, asking giants what it means, they just assume. And, you know, everyone posts it then. But also it happened to FS Landscaping, who's updating Barley Road, or Tom Pemberton's map. He's doing a really cool job. If you saw the pictures that he, I picked those up off of Farm Sim Briscoe's Discord. He's already building the new dairy alongside Tom, so I think that's really cool. I'm just trying to draw a field in Courseplay on here, so you've got the draw option, and then I was going to go into the custom field editor and shuffle it about so that it matched. But I managed to do the first one okay. Couldn't be bothered to do the rest of it, if I'm honest. So I went with the base game worker in the end. If you're interested in how this works, I do have a tutorial on it. But because this field is not square, I just couldn't be bothered to sort it. Honestly, it's possibly close enough that it would have worked, and I'm wondering if once it's got crop in, Courseplay might pick it up properly with 2 separate crops. I don't know. We'll see. So this is going to be barley. We've got wheat growing. So the wheat I'm going to whole crop, I think. The barley will combine for straw. And then we're going to do maize and potatoes in the other 2. So the potatoes we can plant in April, so that'll probably be the next video. We do need to pick up a potato planter, which is going to be a fairly hefty expense. I could lease it, because we only really need it to plant 1 field. There is a big potato planting contract as well, though. So that might, and we could either lease it and use it for that as well, and that would recover the leasing cost, or I could buy it and use the potato planting contract to cover some of the cost. It's quite a big field, I think, and I'm probably only going to be getting the 3-meter planter, so it might be a bit of a grind to do the contract. But our fields are quite small, so I don't see the need in buying a 6-meter potato planter to plant our fields. But potato planting contracts always pay crazy money, so there is that element. So you see, I gave up on the custom field. I deleted it, and I did try again. I did wonder if parking in a different position would help. It doesn't. So I think what I end up doing is manually running a couple of headlands and then getting stuck in. If I wasn't immediately wanting to plant this, I could have just let Courseplay disc the whole field and then come in and planted it. But I basically wanted to follow the disc with the seeder, so that didn't work. The other option would have been to do what I did on Attingham and get something to put on the front of the seeding tractor just to knock the plough ridges down. I know you don't need to do this. It's an extra step that I like to do. So, yeah, I know I could just drill straight into this. It would be fine. Particularly as I believe our seeder is a direct drill. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to deal with the plough ridges. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you and those that will, you know, I do mix in some elements of realism. That's why I'm doing this. But you'll then notice that I end up driving the wrong way across the plough furrows, which would have been a heck of a journey for someone. But, you know, you've got to do that at some point. So, I guess, or not, if you do it in line with the field, how the field was ploughed. You know, to some extent, I just wanted to play some Farm Sim at the weekend. I'm really keen. So I mentioned Barley Road. I'm really keen to have a go on that in some way, shape, or form when it gets updated. I didn't really look at it when it released. but I think it looks really good at the moment, and I'm kind of into watching my Tom Pemberton at the moment, so I don't know if that'll be something that I just play myself or whether it becomes like a little mini series or something. We'll see. But yeah, you can see there is lots of fertilizer and lots of seed here. This was poised ready for there were a whole load of fertilizing contracts for DS Agri to do, so we just kind of got it dropped at the yard ready for them to get to work. I figured this was easier because none of them have farm manager permissions yet, so well, one or two do, but if they didn't get on, they wouldn't have been able to buy the consumables they needed. So, and we'll use them. There's a lot of FERT contracts that get done, so it'll all get used up. I'm not worried. I see it as an investment rather than an expense. Yeah, and also thanks for the comment on the big bag lifter. Probably need to sort out adding in a big bag lifter, but yeah, I really appreciate it. So the reason I spoke about in a previous video about how health and safety don't like using pallet forks, and the reason is, the reason that I can't remember who it was of you that commented that the edges of the pallet forks can tear the handles because they are sharp, whereas a big bag lifter has smooth tines forks, I guess, so they're less likely to tear. So I thought that was really cool. I appreciate that answer. So we are going to at some point be picking up a big bag lifter. I think I have one laying around somewhere, so if not, I'm sure I'll be able to download one. We're going to stick some more seed in as well. I'm going to use up the Pioneer pallets first before we use the big bags up. I need to add in the mod that I thought I used to have on here, where you unloaded into big bags rather than into these things, because I don't like handling these. Big bags are so much better. The Giants class these as big bags as well, so that's not confusing at all. Yeah, I wasn't sure how much nitrogen I was going to put on. I basically wanted to set it so that there would be enough that I wouldn't have to refill. So that turns out that I can just run an automatic, but I wasn't sure at the time, so I just filled it, basically. Nearly. Yeah. This map feels completely different in spring. Completely different. So getting through the winter months on here was grim, probably like being in Scotland. It's grim, but now we've got into spring, it just feels like a completely different map. It's not raining every day. It's, you know, there's daylight. I've got mud mod enabled on here, so there was a bit of a debate in the comments from different people. Some were adamant do not add it, some were curious. I've added it. I tested it in the rain and it was fine. The tractor bogged down a bit, but I was on a ploughed field with a plough, and then the tractor dug in a bit, but it didn't get stuck. So at the moment we're going with it. We'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be interesting. It's certainly not the experience that you see on some of the maps where either people have put mud down on the ground or it has been prepared for mud, and therefore field entrances and stuff become, you know, like an 8-foot deep mud hole. That's not the experience I wanted. I just wanted it to be, you know, if it was raining hard, you'd struggle in the fields, because that seems sensible. But yeah, so far it's been okay. We'll see how it goes. If it becomes awful, I'll just remove it. So I'm not putting any mud on the map. I'm not doing any of that. It's just using the fact that when the ground's wet, the tractors sink and have less traction. So yeah, and so far it's been good. So we're doing barley as I would normally do. I'm going to run a few headlands and then we'll get stuck in to the up down rows, and that's why I did something similar with the disc. And the disc is now running on just a normal base game worker, and it worked absolutely fine. It did the whole field. You see so many complaints about base game workers, and you just have to be a bit sensible and make the job. As long as you understand, I'm going to completely show myself up at some point for making comments like this. As long as you understand how the base game workers operate and that they need quite simple scenarios, they work quite well. You know, give them a field which is relatively square, where you've already done headlands, or then generally I think they work okay. The problems you run into is if you don't put a headland in, or it's a weird shape. Because then the game will sometimes struggle to detect the boundary of the field, and if there's then stuff around it, it's going to crash into it, you know? A bit like on Saxthorpe, where workers don't see the berms around the fields, and so it goes ploughing through them. It doesn't see the hedges because they don't have collisions. That's not the workers' fault. And I know on there, Farmson Briscoe did try and set the terrain types to discourage workers from going through them, but it doesn't seem to have worked. It's just something you have to adapt to, and that's not a fault of anyone in particular. You really wouldn't want, particularly on console, because it's base game functionality, you really wouldn't want a worker running that could probably do the job you think they should do. Because it would be so much processing load that you'd probably be better just to have an autocomplete field option. Actually, that was a really cool mod. I don't think it's available in 22. The contractor mod, so there were a couple of contractor mods. There was the one that let you have like extra players in that replaced the worker functionality, so you couldn't tab between vehicles, you tabbed between characters. That one was cool. That one does exist. I think it's on GitHub. The one I mean is where you could click on a field and then you could ask for a contractor to come in and seed it or lime it or something like that. That was quite an interesting mod. That would be kind of cool, and I think that's the only way that you would get perfect worker behavior if you didn't actually see the worker do the job, because otherwise you'd need some pretty hefty algorithms and pathfinding running. And you've only got to have tried to do something really complex or wrong in course play and see how it hangs up as the game tries to work out what you're asking it to do. And it's not actually, I saw it recently, people saying that it'd be really cool to have the AI fields being farmed, seeing the AI fields being farmed. Again, the amount of processing load that I think that would add in to genuinely have AI workers farming the whole map. You could probably do it on a modern high-spec PC, maybe on a small map. But I don't think you'd want to do it on a PS4, I think that would be really hefty load. I think the closest you'll get is like on Sandy Bay, where Oxy had the workers in the fields on the margins. There's a story with that one. So if you've been around since FS19, I did a really long series on Sandy Bay. It was a time-lapse series without commentary, with the exact types of series I say I will not watch. And I was farming the boundaries of that map as well, because they were free. I was mowing the grass for silage. And those workers would come through and move silage bales and knock them off the map and all sorts of stuff. They were a nightmare, to the point where I ended up learning, that was one of the first map edits I did, was learning how to move the traffic spline so that it was off of the field, because I was losing bales off the edge of the field and all sorts of stuff, and it was a bit of a pain. So I think I used to call it the Phantom Farmer. I would come along and steal or move my bales. I think the first time I encountered it, it was like I was working into the night on there, and I drove back to the end of the field at the end of the night, and the bales had moved. And I was like, what's going on here? Did work it out, but it kind of confused me. So I've gone to skip rows because it was easier. I didn't really do a wide enough headland to not skip rows. This is quite a long cedar, particularly for a 4-meter cedar. It's quite a long bit of kit, but it is era appropriate. We are still in the 90s, remember? So we've got the rest of this year and next farming year, so through to the next August in the 90s, and then we'll go into the 2000s. So if you're new to this series, if you just picked it up recently, because I don't think I've mentioned it in a while, this series started on Maypole Farm, and we started off with kit from the 80s and early 90s only, and tech. So we didn't have GPS back then. We're now, and every 2 years we move forwards a decade. So we're now into the 90s. We've done half a year ish of the 90s, maybe more than that now. 3/4 of a year in the 90s. That meant we could get GPS on tractors, and it meant there were more modern tractors available, which is why we had the fleet of John Deere. When we get to not the August coming, the following one, we'll have kit from the 2000s. That will open up some of the last bits of precision farming, I think. We don't, for example, at the moment have bale stackers on here because we don't use auto load. So from everything that I've found, and the guys on Discord have found, bale stackers are a thing that happened at some point after 2000. So we don't have those at the moment. Yes, I know Heston bale chasers existed. I do not want to get Heston baler on here at the moment, and it only moves 10 bales. So, you know, the guys are good enough at bale stacking that they can move a heck of a lot more than 10 bales on a bale trailer. If you watch Maypole, you'll know what I mean from some of the footage of them bale stacking. They got really good at bale stacking. So. But yeah, we are pretty much done on here. I'm going to say thank you to the patrons and the YouTube channel members. I mentioned them earlier, but I did not actually get around to saying thank you. So appreciate you guys supporting the channel. And yeah, pretty much done. I think next time we'll be planting potatoes. So picking up a new bit of kit. I know between videos the DS Agri have been working and I've got a whole bunch of contracts done, so the money will probably look different when I start up again. I haven't actually checked to see what they've done at this point, so hopefully not trashed the place. Otherwise we will be having words, gentlemen. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Any comments, questions, or suggestions, stick them below, and just kind of bear with me while things are a bit weird in the real world. Yeah, see ya. Oh, I had this funny thing with the front weight. You might have noticed it through the video. I forgot to mention it. I kept lowering it, and it was a pain.